Om Aganati Miranda Syanganangana Sadakya Chaksurun Miritam Yana Tasmai Sugirve Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yana Bhutare Sayam Rupakaramayam Darati Sa Parandikam Vandeham Siddharu Siyata Parakamaram Shigurun Vaishnavam Sta Sirupam Sagaritam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Stam Sajevam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Siradha Krishna Padan Sahagana Ladita Shivishakan Vitam Sta Narayanam Namaskritam Naram Chevanaruttamam Devam Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jagodira Nashtaprayashu Bhadresu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Otamashoki Bhakti Bhavati Naistaki Nigamakaparurgaritam Padam Shukamakaramita Sabidham Pibata Bhagatam Rashamaraya Mahora Hora Sikabhuvi Bhakaham Krishna Swadam Bhagate Dhammiguni Harishara Karunashta Dishamasho Padana Kodinoditaham Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutade Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tanamanin Miste Sarasati Devi Gauravani Pachanin Nirvishesa Sunyavadi Praskata Desa Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Wisdom Wednesday, thank you. Manasagagna, Malini Preeti, Hare Krishna, Anjali, welcome to Wisdom Wednesday, Chris Castro, Rupa Manjari, Ram Kishore Das, Lakshmi Nishringa Das, Jimmy and Taruni, and Jean so far. Thank you so much for joining us. We've got 8 comments already, and I haven't even said anything. Govinda Dev, good morning. Hare Krishna. Our topic today is the medicine that will cure birth, death, disease, and old age. We'll finish up the third part in our series on this verse here, which is the 44th verse in the 3rd chapter, the 1st canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Tatra kirtayato vipra viparshir bodhi tejaja aham chadya bhagamam tatra nivishtas tadanugrahat soham va shravi shamamimi yata ditam yata mati. O learned Brahmins, good morning, Stoka Krishna. When Sukadeva Goswami recited Bhagavatam there, in the presence of Maharaj Parikshit, I heard him with rapt attention, and thus by his mercy I learned the Bhagavatam from that great and powerful sage. Now I shall try to make you hear the very same thing as I learned it from him and as I have realized it. Now, if you're going to hear transcendental subject matters, you have to hear from a realized personality, someone who himself has heard from another authority and realized the knowledge. There's hearing and then there's hearing. Prabhupada used to say the elephant, I think it's the African elephant. The Indian elephant has smaller ears. The African elephant is the one you see in the pictures with the huge, huge ears, which are as big as a small shed, each one of them. Prabhupada said the elephant has, and Prabhupada would say, big ears. But it's the peculiarity of these human form of ears. They may not be as big as the elephant's ears, but we can hear the subject matter, transcendental subject matter of the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, and we can be experienced. We can realize that knowledge. We can compute it. We can mull it over. We can reach the correct conclusions. That's the benefit of having a human form of life and these human ears. But we have to also be very careful not just to hear from any Tom, Dick, and Harry who's standing on a street corner. One time we were doing a Festival of Colors in Sacramento, and prior to each festival we go through a couple weeks before and put up posters, coffee shops, bagelries, grocery stores. And so one time I was downtown Sacramento having just put up a poster in a local Starbucks, and I was at an intersection. There were 4 corners, and on 3 out of the 4 corners, there was someone, a homeless person, screaming and yelling. You know, one of them was quoting scripture, and another one was uttering profanity at the world in general, and another one was just speaking nonsense. All 3 of them at the top of their lungs, on 3 out of the 4 corners. So you have to use a little discrimination about who it is that you hear from. One should approach a spiritual master, a spiritual mentor with the idea of hearing from someone who has heard in their turn from someone else. I talked to Lakshmi Nishringa yesterday, who's living in Puerto Rico. His wife is a doctor, originally from Kazakhstan. She came to Puerto Rico to do her residency and did one year of residency, and she needs to do 2 more years of residency. So we're seeing if there's any possibility of that here in Utah. But the point is that you can't just become a doctor by reading medical books. You can't become a doctor even by completing medical school. But you have to do residency. You have to intern under doctors who are far more experienced than you are. And why is that? Well, among other reasons, people that have practiced medicine or people that have practiced law for decades and decades and decades, aside from the letter of the law, they know the spirit of the law. They have a certain intuition, which is only gained by decades of practicing. Some physicians, without even taking diagnostics of the patient, they immediately know what's the problem and how to address the source of the problem. Prabhupada told the story one time. In India, there are all kinds of doctors. You just off the street, a little portal, and you go in, you can see the doctor, and they may be licensed, they may not be licensed, but licensed or not, they've been practicing for years and years and years and years. And Prabhupada told the story of one doctor. He was talking to a patient in one of these little cubby holes. Someone passed by outside and just gave a cough. The doctor said that person will die within 24 hours. And it happened. It actually happened. So keen was his intuition after decades and decades of practicing medicine that he had a certain instinct, a certain intuition that you can't have just by reading books and just by taking courses. So you cannot become a bona fide doctor, an experienced doctor, without having interned. I thought it was 2 years, but I guess it's 3 years under other more experienced doctors. You can't become a practicing lawyer. You may have gone to law school, you may have read all sorts of law books, but until you clerk in the office of more experienced lawyers, you can't become a lawyer. Similarly, you cannot recite the Bhagavatam with any potency unless you've heard the Bhagavatam, unless you've interned yourself or apprenticed yourself to someone who in his turn has heard from his guru, spiritual master, and listened with such rapt attention that those truths have become manifest within him. And that's how the knowledge itself comes down unchanged, unblemished through millennium after millennium after millennium. The mechanism is called the parampara, or the chain of disciplic succession. One receives not only the body of knowledge, but the devotion. One receives the appreciation of this great treasure house of spiritual knowledge, which was originally enunciated by the Lord. And one comes to desire nothing more than to pass it down unblemished, unchanged, intact. We mentioned yesterday that Prabhupada said his main credit for having successfully started the International Society for Krishna Consciousness in the Western countries, for having exported Krishna consciousness successfully outside of India for the first time, his main credit is he didn't change anything. He compared himself to the postman. Postman just delivers the letter, doesn't open it up, edit it, rewrite it, then seal it again and send it along. He just delivers it as it is. And so amongst all the editions of the Bhagavad Gita, and I think there are 3, 4, even 5,000 different so-called translations and commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita. In the English language alone, you'll notice that Prabhupada is called Bhagavad Gita as it is. And if you're just coming across these talks and this is something new for you, but you want to get wet, you want to get your foot wet, you want to find out a little bit more about it, by all means pick up a copy of the Bhagavad Gita, but make sure you pick up a copy of the Bhagavad Gita as it is. Rather than the Bhagavad Gita, the people actually have the effrontery to talk about Gandhi's Gita, or Isherwood's Gita, or Radha Krishna's Gita, or Nikalananda's Gita. Hey, it's Krishna's Gita. Hello. And that is exactly the problem. There's so many unauthorized commentators on the Gita. There's so many unauthorized reciters of the Gita. It's very important to hear the Gita, the Srimad Bhagavatam, from someone who has heard from his spiritual master and so on and so forth, back up the chain to the original Jagat Guru, the original reciter of the Gita, which is Krishna. And if there is an edition of the Gita which does not give you Krishna and not recommend to you bhakti, devotional service to Krishna, then that is to be avoided like the plague, as if it were poison to your spiritual life. And Prabhupada's purpose in coming to the Western countries was to counteract misimpressions which have been promoted by non-devotional commentators on the Bhagavad Gita. If you're not a devotee, if you're not prepared to practice devotion, if you're not prepared to receive devotion in your heart, just go write your own book. Start your own school. But don't mess with Krishna's book, Krishna's teachings, Krishna's tradition, Krishna's line of disciplic succession. As we mentioned yesterday, and we're talking about doctors here, the physician uses the patient's tongue to gauge the relative state of his good or ill health. The first thing you do when you go to the doctor's office is stick out your tongue and say, ah. And that's how the doctor determines. It's one of his key tools in determining what might be wrong or what might be right with you. And so similarly, whether you're in spiritual health or not hinges on this same organ, the tongue. Of all the senses, the tongue is the most powerful. The tongue is the most difficult to control. Just look at how out of control the tongue is with social media, with cell phones. It's been like pouring gasoline on the fire. People already have a tendency, lacking the focus of Krishna consciousness, they have a tendency to gossip, to complain, to go to the first person they meet and unload all of their problems and all of their complaints on them. Well, that's just magnified by many, many factors over by Facebook and by cell phones, all the avenues of communication we have nowadays. And there's nothing wrong with communicating. As a communicator myself, you won't find anyone more in favor of communicating. In fact, I'll tell you a little personal story. When I joined iskcon in 1970, there was really only one engagement for devotees, and that was to go out and distribute books. We'd leave one person back at the temple to take care of the deities, and everybody else would go out for 6 and 8 hours and distribute books. It's not like that now. There are many people out there. They may be in the cubicle next to you, dressed in pant and shirt, and they may be a devotee and you may not even know it. The person that sells you insurance, the doctor that you go to. So we're spread now in all different areas of society, different occupations and vocations. But in those days, it was important to establish a beathead. Just like Christ, when he originally arrived on the scene, he picked up some fishermen and he said, we have to go and preach. We have to establish this teaching. And some of them said, well, can we at least pull in the fish? He got to them while they had fish in the net and they hadn't pulled them on the boat. And they said, well, can we at least pull the fish on the boat? And he said, no, the urgency of this is such. People need to know this so that they can take the medicine and be inoculated against birth, death, disease, and old age. So we can't wait. There's such urgency to this that just let your fish go, beat your boats, and come after me. And they're walking down the road on their mission. And one of them says, oh, this is my village here. It's just like a half a kilometer. And there's a funeral of my cousin going. Can I just go to the funeral of my cousin and rejoin you, a few hours down the road? And Jesus says, no, let the dead bury the dead. So this is a sociological phenomenon. Whenever there's a great teacher and there's a lack of the proper medicine in society at that time, then the teacher feels an urgency to establish their teachings, to get some traction, get a foothold. As time goes on, people diversify. From being full-on missionaries, residents in the missionary facilities. They go out and they get their own apartments, they buy their own homes, they have their children, they have their vocations, and there's a great diversity of interests, which is the case with Hare Krishna movement now. But in those days, everyone was a book distributor. And I went out on book distribution pretty much 6 days a week for years and years and years. The problem was you get so used to talking to people, so used to being extroverted, distributing books, and meeting people from all over the world and relating with them, resonating with them, that when I would have my day off, I would feel just really bad, I had a pneumonia shot 2 days ago, and the girl that gave me the shot said, "You'll probably feel a little run down tomorrow and your arm will hurt." And you'll notice when I went Hare Krishna yesterday, ow. So all yesterday I was kind of a little bit down. My batteries were a little low as a result of that. And so I used to feel the same way, mildly depressed, when I wasn't going out on book distribution. I was so predicated towards talking to people and being in high energy that when you disconnected me on my day off, it was like, I felt depressed and I felt guilty, which is my problem anyway. So I thought, how can I be always communicating with people? This is my anointing, to communicate one way or another. And I asked Krishna, I said, "Krishna, is there any way I can communicate with people all the time, even when I'm sleeping?" And Krishna gave me the answer: radio station. So get yourself a radio station. And we were living in Los Angeles at the time. Radio stations in LA were millions and millions of dollars, even in the late 70s, early 80s. But I monitored the radio station for sale classified section in Broadcast Weekly for over a year, and came across an advertisement for a small AM radio station with 5 acres of land in, of all places, Spanish Fork, Utah. And so one thing led to another, and now the radio station's been running for 35 years. If you're in Utah Valley, you can get it at 1480 AM. But the advances of modern technology now, anywhere in the world there's Wi-Fi, you can receive iskcon radio. Just get one of those, download one of those free apps. We use Simple Radio, and you can hear it anywhere in the world. We were in Los Angeles once, again, putting up posters for an upcoming Festival of Colors, and we had one of those connectors in the car that gives you broadband, and we were listening to Utah radio for many, many days while we were driving around the LA freeways preparing to promote this particular festival. So nobody is more in favor of communication than yours truly. And I actually welcome the internet, I welcome cell phones, because they empower a preacher, a communicator, to reach out to more people than ever before. I wouldn't have a connection with you all were it not for the advances in modern communication. But of course, with every blessing, there's a burden, and the burden is to use it responsibly, to use it in a disciplined way. So as well as being a valuable tool for preachers and missionaries, people who are transcendental physicians who want to diagnose and treat patients remotely, that's all been made possible by internet and cell phones, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. However, of course, there's the chance, just like free will. Free will is a blessing. No one would question the benefits of having free will. No one wants to be controlled. No one wants to be programmed. No one wants to be a robot. So free will is the greatest gift that God gave us, to do this or to do that. But at the same time, free will is the portal through which people jump into excessive drug use and addictions and promiscuity and violence and all the ills, the depression, the suicide, the addictions. The crimes are basically arising due to the misuse of free will, and yet no one would say, let's take free will away. That's not even on the table. We all recognize that the greatest gift our Creator gave us was free will, and we wouldn't even consider giving up our free will under any circumstances. At the same time, we have to recognize that that same free will is the cause of most of the problems in society. It said, Utishta Jagvatam Praptam Varodapa Nisitam Karadaratyaya. A razor is a very good thing. There's nothing wrong with a razor. I think I cut myself on the lip 2 or 3 days ago. I don't know if it's showing now. It was yesterday. Yeah, I think it's still there. Yep. Anyway, a razor's a good thing. You know, you can make yourself look civilized and presentable and handsome, if you like. But a little inattention, as I did, I was shaving in a little bit of a hurry, and I just went too high. You know, the skin on your lip is much more tender, and it's much easier to cut than the tougher skin down below. So I just went too high, and I just caught the bottom of my lip, and then it was bleeding. I had to get some cold toilet paper and press it in there to stop the bleeding. There was a little scab. So the point is that the razor is good, but a little bit of inattention, and then you have a ghastly result. You know, you go for a job interview and you've got cuts all over your face. The interviewer says, "So what makes you think you're qualified for this job, which requires concentration, focus, and attention?" Similarly with free will, no one would question the value of free will, but at the same time, you have to use it properly. You have to use it attentively. Otherwise, a lot of unwanted things are going to be generated if you all of that. Similarly, internet's not bad, cell phone's not bad, advances in communication are not bad. We live in a global village. I'm talking to Malini Preeti from Malaysia and Anjali from Phoenix, and Jimmy and Truny from Minnesota, and Ram Kishore from Minnesota, and Justin Thorson from Michigan, and I'm just so privileged to be able to associate with all of you too. And yes, Malini Preeti, we were number 3 in the world for book distribution in the 70s. In fact, we were number 1 in America, except for the fact that Rameshwar on New Year's Eve, he would call us up and very disingenuously say, "True, so what were your book distribution totals for December?" And all up through November, the Berkeley Temple in Los Angeles would be neck and neck to see who was the top distribution temple in America. And then, of course, December would be the final to see who would nudge out who. And Rameshwar was GBC, he was president, he was sannyasi, and so when he would call up in a very friendly, supposedly non-competitive mood on New Year's Eve afternoon and just asked me casually, "So True, what were your totals on in December?" At least one time I got taken in and I told him. So and I said, "What are yours?" And he said, "Oh, well, we haven't counted, it's yet to be determined." He hung up the phone. And then I heard later that because they didn't have the same high total that we had, he went knocking on the door, this sannyasi, this GBC guru, he went knocking on the apartment doors of the householders, said, we can't allow this to happen. Berkeley's going to beat us in terms of books distributed and Lakshmi rented to the BBT. So he went and personally collected donations from all of the household. He knew what we'd done, and he knew what he had to raise in order to beat it, and that's how we would get nudged out in America. He did the same thing the following year, and I wouldn't tell him. So that year we were number 1 in America, number 3 in the world. And Malini Preeti is a great, very enthusiastic book distributor from Malaysia. If you need any inspiration in book distribution, just befriend her on Facebook, and every day you'll see her smiling face. She's standing side by side with some other very satisfied customer who's got a whole bunch of books in their hand. So she's very enthusiastic about distributing books, and then prasadam also. A wonderful devotee, a wonderful addition to our little forum here. In any case, Prabhupada established the International Society for Krishna Consciousness so we could communicate to the best of our ability using the technological advances that are available to spread the bona fide teachings of Krishna all over the world. And only this will do good to men. The speculations of a bogus commentator, of a non-devotee, it may be very stimulating, be very interesting from an academic point of view. It may be something that I would like to study in order to write my thesis or to get my master's or my PhD. But all of that is really just licking the outside of the bottle. You can never know the taste of the honey by tasting it from the outside. As long as the glass is between your tongue and the honey, you'll never actually have the taste. So if you want the taste of bhakti, which over and over and over again, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, is the medicine to reverse the trend of birth, death, disease, and old age. Janma mritu jara vyadhi. Gunavatama tuitate dehi deha shamudvara. Janma mritu vimuktam mritum ashnute. By tasting the actual nectar of devotion from the inside of the jar, having received it from a realized, practicing devotee, that medicine, that taste, will elevate you above the three modes of material nature. And when you taste the nectar of devotion, you're tasting what it is that eternity is. A pleasure which has no beginning, no middle, and no end. Yehi samsparsha jabagadukyone ariantavanta konti anante shuramata. Those who are experienced, those who are relishing the nectar of devotion, have nothing to do with so-called pleasures which have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Vimuktam amritum ashnute. Vimuktam amrit. They are free from that which is temporary, that which is perishable, that which is dark, that which is ignorant. They are vimuktam amritum ashnute. By virtue of having tasted the nectar of devotion, they no longer chase after or hanker after the terrible temporary things of this material world. Vishavi nivartate narahasya dehinam rashovam rashopyashar param drishta nivartate. Why are their interests 180 degrees different than the interests of the average people? Because they've experienced a higher taste. Simple example, you've been eating dry bread all of your life. You don't know anything but dry bread. Someone asks you to give up the dry bread. Why should I give up the dry bread? If I give up the dry bread, I won't have anything to eat. The dry bread is what has sustained my life for as far back as I can remember. I need dry bread. Dry bread is essential for my continued existence. And then someone says, well, I acknowledge that, but here, try some angel food cake made with egg replacer. Wow, you mean, and this will do all that the dry bread will do and more, plus be so much more tasty and relishable? Yes, it will keep you in a much higher state of health. It'll give you more energy. It'll accomplish everything that the dry bread accomplished and more. So that person will never again go back to dry bread again. Experiencing the higher taste of bhakti, which has no beginning, no middle, no end, which is eternal because it's spiritual in nature and is not galubjaman. Exactly, yeah. Anyone who tastes a galubjaman will never go back to dry bread again. The nature of spirit is unlimited. It's not bounded by any material considerations. It can expand and keep expanding and keep expanding ad infinitum. So therefore the key, the pin code, seeing as how we're talking all in technological terms nowadays, the pin code, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. It is the tongue. The tongue is your digit to push the pin code, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. That will get you into the kingdom of God by training and disciplining the tongue, taking it away from gossip, from complaining, and hey, devotees, give me a break. Conspiracy theories? Really? Really? You're disciples of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, because he told you the truth, because he was totally honest and he delivered you the real medicine for becoming free from birth, death, disease, and old age. So how does someone who originally got into the devotional line because of the honesty and the integrity and the straightforwardness of Srila Prabhupada, how do they get distracted by all these conspiracy theories? Lakshmi and I agreed on our phone conversation yesterday that if these devotees would spend half the time knuckling down with their devotional practice they do on spinning out conspiracy theories, they would be back to home, back to Godhead already. Prabhupada himself, when he approached his spiritual master, he was a Gandhian. And he said, shouldn't we first adjust things in India so that we're no longer colonized, and then we'll have a greater voice on the world stage? And Bhaktisiddhanta said, don't waste your time with the Gandhian movement, with the Free Indian movement. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu started the mission, got thousands and thousands of followers under the foot of the Muslim occupation, which was much more repressive than the British. Bhaktisiddhanta said, don't pay it any mind. The urgency of delivering the medicine of Krishna consciousness is such that we cannot distract ourselves, even with the cause of freeing India from the British rule. And so Bhaktisiddhanta talked Prabhupada out of participating in the Free Indian movement in favor of espousing the Krishna conscious movement. And in fact, again, if we're doctors, if we're physicians, and if we have the medicine, and if we're on the battlefield, we have only one concern, and that is how to get the medicine to the wounded soldiers. They're wounded, they're dying, their time left is very limited. Our time, I'm 74, and I don't know about my godbrothers. I doubt any of them are much younger than 68. Maybe Rukmini, who joined at 16, is younger than 68, but the rest of us are 68 plus. So our time is very short. Why in the world would you want to divert yourself and get your head all wrapped around these conspiracy theories? I mean, honestly, I just don't get it. We're speaking one thing, but by getting involved in all these conspiracy theories, it totally undermines that which we stand for. So please knuckle down in our waning years. It is said the end of this life should be preparation for the life that never ends. We're not even going to be here in 1 or 2 years. So who cares? Who cares? We have one business and one business only, is to practice our own sadhana, our own Krishna consciousness very diligently, consistently, daily, and then to spread the medicine to others, to all the other wounded people who are suffering on the battlefield. And we do that by, we do both, in fact. We do good to ourselves, we do good to others, starting with the tongue. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Ata Sri Krishna Namani Nabhavedbiner, Shevan Mukhi Jivado Shayam Seva Sparitya. As we said yesterday, if you want to know the state of one's spiritual health, look at what the tongue is doing. It's chanting the names of the Lord, discussing the pastimes of the Lord, and taking only vegetarian food which is offered to the Lord, then that is a person who is in perfect, good spiritual health. They get their checkup and they get an A+. Bhaktivinoda Thakur has said, the Maha Mantra delivered through the disciplic succession from the lips of pure devotees is Anechi Ushodi Maya Nasi Bada Lagi Harinama Maha Mantra Leo Tumi Magi. He attributes this statement to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Krishna himself in the guise of a devotee. I have brought medicine, Anechi Ushodi. Ushodi means medicine. I have brought medicine, Nasi Bada Lagi, to waken the spirit souls from their slumber, their disease condition. I had my, again, there's a lot of parallels here, so I hope you don't mind my beating this to death. And I'm not complaining. I mean, I had my pneumonia vaccination the day before yesterday, and my shoulder was sore, and I felt very sleepy all day. I slept like most of the day. I just slept most of the day. So, but today I'm like awake and fired up and ready to go at it again with renewed energy. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, according to this verse from Bhaktivinoda Thakur, wants to wake up the sleeping souls. Why are they sleeping? Because they're sick. Their energy levels are low. They're not even coming close to realizing their potential to become brilliant, luminous devotees of the Lord and to light up the world and set an example to their friends, families, relatives, co-countrymen. Because of the disease condition, they're also slumbering. They're sleeping. Not just more than necessary, but actually sleepwalking at work, sleepwalking at home. The senses themselves are repressed, pushed down, suffocated. The senses themselves are barely functional. When you become spiritually awakened, when you become cured from the slumber and the symptoms of a non-God-centered way of life, your senses go to a whole new level, being no longer conditioned by earth, air, fire, water. The senses can feel things with an intensity that's thousands of times greater than our current level of intensity. That's what is the result of taking the medicine of Krishna consciousness. The more you take the medicine, the less the senses interact with the external objects of the senses, the more that you turn inwards, the more that you take advantage of and feel the bubbling nectar, the living waters of the spiritual self and the Paramatma which reside within the layer of the heart. Anandam buddhi vardhanam patipadam purnamritashvadanam. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Nam namakari bahodani jasarva shaktishtata pitanyamita shmarane kalata yatadushi tava kripa bhagavan mamapi durdayavmi dishami ajani nanuragaha. In fact, if you guys have no objection, if you give me a bunch of emojis, I might just do the, seeing as how I did the Bhagavad Gita rap yesterday and you guys seem to have liked it so much, I can do my Shiksha Stakam rap today if I get enough encouragement from you as well. We're on a roll, a rap roll. Okay, the Shiksha Stakam, paraphrased. Chanting the holy names cleanses the heart, extinguishes flames, breaks the chains, blesses the earth at large with moon-like rays, discharging waves of nectar. Our sense has been craving since ancient days. The holy names put all their blessings to shame. Krishna Govinda chanted anywhere, everywhere. The mercy Shakti is fully there. A divine app to restore your mental software. Tap the Mawa, restart your heart. Tap the reservoir of loving care. No hard and fast rules, no lessons, no schools. The bliss of bhakti, rare yet free for the taking. Only declare your heart is aching in divine love awakening. Night and day, by constant recitation, chant the great mantra without hesitation, free from temptation, with the sensation of feeling yourself lower than the straw in the street, more taller than the tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige. Humility is the key to enjoy the vibration eternally. Wealth in the millions, beautiful women, the spell of fame, worldly acclaim, even liberation. Hey, totally lame compared to the champagne of drinking the holy name. Krishna Govinda, son of Nanda, though you're the one, second to none, my shining sun, I'm heartbroken in the ocean of birth and death. Pull me out of this cruel blender, surrendered as an atom in the sweet splendor of your tender lotus feet. Lord, when will my eyes pour with tears of love like rain from the skies above? When will my voice choke up, invoking your name? When in transcendence will my bodily hairs stand on end? Though a moment appears like 12 years or more, when you're not here, I've only to proclaim your name and I'm smiling again. Even if you restrain me, roughen your embrace, or pain me by hiding your face, you remain my Lord unconditionally. In rain or shine, gain or decline, you are mine and I am yours and you are mine. Anyway, messed it up there in the last bit. Cheto darpanam arjanam babadevagni nirvapanam saryakaira vichandika vidharam vidyavadajuvinam anandam buddhi pratiparam purnamritashvaranam sarvatmashnapanam param vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtanam nam namakari bahada nija sarvashaktis tadapitani amitishmarana karaha etajishi tava kripa bhagavan mapi durdaiv mitishami ajani naragaham trinadapi sanichana tadarapi seshana manina manadana kirtanyana sarahari nadanam janam sindarim kavitam pajagadish Mama Janmani Janmani Shri Bhavatad Bhaktira Haituki Twaiti Ainanda Tanuja Kinkaram Patitam Bambishame Kripayatava Parapan Kajashita the Vidishintayam Nadam Gadadusha Gada Varanam Gadgadura Pulakam Nichanam Babukada Tavanamani Vishri Aslishava Pararam Padashnama Madarshana Mamatam Karotkinam Yatatava Vididatidapa My Prana Natashtusa Eva Naparaham. That was Shiksha Stakam, 8 instructive verses on the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. as originally spoken by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Bengali, and an English paraphrase version of it as well. Rajyabhati Sutra says, the more you take the medicine of Krishna consciousness, the more you turn inwards. Thank you for inspiring us to take this medicine seriously and share it with wounded others without getting distracted. And Malini Pritu says, that was a super cool Shiksha Stakam rap. Thank you, Malini Priti. I take compliments coming from you very, very seriously. So there's a verse from the 19th, 2nd chapter, 6th canto, 19th verse. Yatagadam viryatamam upayuktam yadichaya ajanato pi atmagunam korya mantra pi udaritaham. Now you take a medicine, it's like fire. You stick your hand in fire, fire's going to burn. You don't need a degree in physics to know how fire burns. It's just going to burn. Similarly, you chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Rama, Hare Hare, making sure that you receive the Maha Mantra as well as the information about the Bhagavad Gita and Bhakti Yoga from the right sources. We cannot stress that enough. It is crucial. Your job is very simple. Just listen to the nectar, drink the nectar through the ears, let it satisfy your heart, enjoy the bliss, get your life straightened out, get amongst some good association with devotees, enjoy sumptuous prasadam. All of that is easily accomplished, but you have to get your first element right. Yeah, probably gave the example. You may have a whole complicated equation that takes up a whole blackboard, and every aspect of that equation is correctly calculated. It's exactly right, except you start in the upper left-hand side of the board with 2 + 2 = 5. Now everything after that was correct, but it was also totally incorrect because you started from the wrong, your first axiom was incorrect. It should have been 2 + 2 = 4. And then everything after that would have been really spot on. But because you started 2 + 2 = 5, then even if you did everything after that correctly, diligently, conscientiously, it's all a waste of time. You have to throw it all out. And so similarly, we need to start by hearing from the right authorities, those whose hearts are imbued with devotion and who have undergone the discipline of training under the guidance of a previously realized soul. If that's the case, this kicks in. It says, if a person unaware of the effective potency of a certain medicine takes that medicine or even is forced to take it, it will act even without his knowledge because the medicine's potency does not depend on the patient's understanding. Similarly, even though one does not know the value of chanting the holy name of the Lord, if one chants knowingly or unknowingly, the chant will be very effective. Just like fire burns, doesn't require how many of us have taken antibiotics to cure an infection? We don't know how the maybe you've already had your vaccination against COVID. We're assured by the scientific medical community that if we get vaccinated, our chances of getting COVID are reduced by 95%. We don't know how that is. We have no clue. Even if a doctor explained it to us, we probably still wouldn't be any the wiser. But these are authorities. These are people that have studied it. They know what they're talking about, in spite of, conspiracy theories and yada, 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 yada. I mean, you have to have some authorities that you respect, okay? So people don't go to medical school, practice residency for 10 or 15 years and not know more than you do. Sorry if I'm offensive there. But anyway, we don't need to know. We just need to know it works. That's all. We're driving our cars. We don't know how our cars work, but the mechanic knows how the car works, and that means I don't have to know. I just know that he knows. So similarly, we're encouraged and enjoined by all the great authorities that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Mata parataram yanat kinchan ahushtam rishya sarve deva shirnara asito devya shayam chava barisime param rama param dhamma pavitam param purusham sabsa adi demadim. In the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Param Brahma, I'm the Supreme Spirit. Param Dhamma, I'm the supreme shelter and abode. of all living beings. Povitam idam uttamam. I'm the purest. I am above darkness. I'm above ignorance. I'm above temporality. I am totally on the transcendental planet. Purusham sasvatam divyam. I am transcendental. I am eternal. I am the supreme person. Adi Devaham Vidum. I created Brahma, Shiva, Vishnu, and Ganesh, Lakshmi. Everything comes from me. Not only do I declare it to you, our friend and associate Arjuna, but Ashhushtam Rishya Sarve. All the sages and demigods, they also confirm. Asito Devalo Vyasa Swayam Chapavisha. Arjuna says, after hearing the 10 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna just gets totally in line with Krishna. I totally accept everything that you've said. It's corroborated by great saints and sages. It's corroborated by scripture. So therefore, there is no doubt in my mind that the medicine of devotion, of chanting your holy names and taking your prasad, associating with your devotees, is in fact the medicine to stop the repetition of birth and death. I may not understand all the details about how it works or why it works, but I've got all the bona fides, all the authorities backing and supporting and confirming the process. Therefore, with great faith and hope and excitement and expectation, I'm going to continually chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. There's more. There's always more, because our process is a process that has no beginning, no middle, and no end. But I know you have things that you have to do today, rounds to chant, prasadam to take, devotees with whom to associate, and so I don't want to bite off more of your time than I deserve. But thank you so much for the time that you do spend coming onto this forum every morning. I can see in the comment section, Prapana Bhat Gopal, Hare Krishna, Malini Prita, who's been very active commenting throughout this session, Rajyabhati Sutra, whom I already read his quote, Ram Kishore Das, and then there's 25 people that have liked it. Lakshmi, thank you. Radhe Sham, Sundari Priya, Sabita Rotre, first time I believe for that person. Raleigh Walter, thank you. Vaibhavi, Celia, second day in a row. Thank you, Celia. Stephen Farmer, Chris Castro and his family as well. Jimmy and Taruni, Govinda Dev, Susan Phillips, thank you, Susan, for coming back. Anjali, Rajyabhati Sutra, Ram Kishore, Manohar Das, thank you so much for joining us. Irish Mukhe Ryan, your wife is back from the hospital, doing well, I trust. Thank you so much. We've done Festival of Colors in Vegas a number of years, which is where Irish Mukhe Mikey lives. So I hope you've had occasion to sing and dance and chant and throw colors with us in Vegas. It's tentatively scheduled for April 17th in 2021, but the jury's still out as far as we'll be able to actually go through with it. By the way, if anybody knows the technology of putting on virtual events that are ticketed, please share, or if you're a networker, give me the name of someone who knows the technology of how to coordinate all that, and encode it and decode it, because we'd like to, when we resume our live events, we'd like to also make the experience available to anyone anywhere in the world who would like to participate in a Festival of Colors through virtual connection. And we like ticketed events as well. You can put on a live event, and with the same budget that you used to put on a live event, and really just a few extra dollars, you can make that same event available virtually to a worldwide audience. Although live events have virtually been shut down during the COVID, some very enterprising and energetic event organizers have pioneered the field of virtual events, live events. And for instance, there are theaters, off-Broadway theaters, that only seat 300 people. But in a virtual world, they've sold like 100,000 tickets virtually. See, so this is a huge field, and I feel that we should not allow it to pass us by as conscientious, enthusiastic, excited Krishna missionaries. So if anybody has the tools or the networking to help me out here, we would really like to dive into, yeah, Bright Star. I know about Bright Star. I know about Stellar Tickets, which seems to be the forerunner in the area too. But what I'm really looking for is someone who has some hands-on experience and can walk us through this. Yuda Dodu, thanks for joining us in addition to all the other. That's about our time for today and for this week. We have the Jobathon on Friday. If you feel a resonance, a connection to the Spanish Fork Temple, and you would like to donate the rounds that you chant next Friday on New Year's Day to our total in competition, transcendental competition with Salt Lake City, you're welcome to do so. One caveat is the indication that you feel your connection to Spanish. One of our Salt Lake members, he suggested that all those people that listen to his talks from India could donate their rounds, just like people listen to my talks could donate their rounds. But there's one caveat. One has to have evidenced one's attachment to the Spanish Fork or Salt Lake temples by having given a donation. So I pointed out to this devotee that most of you who listen to me have been kind enough and open-hearted enough and generous enough that when I did my birthday fundraiser not too long ago, we raised $5,500, and Govinda Dev from Salt Lake City gave $500 of that, and I'm well aware. But the bulk of the rest of the money came from you all, and so by virtue of your having committed financially and in terms of time and energy to join us, you are invited to contribute your rounds. And we're not going to invite those who listen to our friends' talks from India who have never donated to contribute their rounds. And again, all of this is an attitude of friendly spirit. If we can challenge the greater numbers of devotees in Salt Lake City to do their level best, then they will, as I predict, win the competition, chant more rounds than we do, but they will have to work for it. They cannot settle into a mood of complacency because they have greater numbers. We plan to give them a run for their money. In the past few years, we've met and exceeded our goal of 3 million names of God with the idea of donating at least one name of God to every man, woman, and child who live in the state of Utah. So we've accomplished that goal, but now we're looking towards the next thing. I'm not sure what that benchmark might be, but let's all combine to chant as many names of the Lord as we can next Friday and see where the Lord leads us with that enhanced intelligence and that enhanced commitment to the holy name and the enhanced combinedness of our various communities, both located physically in Salt Lake City and our remote friends and supporters. I feel that Krishna is doing something new here, something unprecedented. I don't have all the answers, but I'm very excited. I'm sitting on the edge of my seat with excitement and anticipation. Krishna works in newer and newer ways. He works in seasons, and so I feel that something's unfolding here, something's going on here. Let me just finish with a little poem, another little rap song. It's very quick. See if I can recall it. My life is but a weaving between my Lord and me. I cannot choose the colors, but he worketh steadily. He often weaves sorrow, and I in foolish pride forget he sees the upper, and I the underside. Not until the loom falls silent and the shuttle ceases to fly will Krishna unroll the canvas and reveal the reasons why. The dark threads are as needful in the weaver's skillful hand as are the threads of gold and silver in the pattern that he has planned. If Krishna is up to something, you can take it from me, and we will sit on the edge of our seats and continue chanting in keen anticipation of excitement of seeing what it is that Krishna's next going to roll out. Thank you for this week. Next week we'll be back with the next verse. Actually, this is the final verse. This is the final verse in the 3rd chapter of 1st Canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So we'll be back next Monday, Motivational Monday, with the 45th verse first verse in the 4th chapter of 1st Canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. One final time before we take your leave. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare